Leveling up your lords and heroes and deciding what items to give them seems like something simple, but it can sometimes spell the difference between victory and defeat. These two small mechanics can drastically change not just the stats and abilities of your lords and heroes, but also of any units that fights alongside them. So let's break everything down so you know exactly how to build your lords and heroes. And if you want to know exactly how to avoid ads on these videos, it's by becoming a channel member. All of the same videos with none of the ads, all for $1 a month. Learn more at the join button below, and now let's get into the lords. So I've actually done a video on leveling up lords and heroes in the past, but that was a pretty long time ago and times have changed, so it bears revisiting. When leveling up lords and heroes, I believe you can follow the same priorities every single time, with a few exceptions. We'll do the lords first since they generally have the most going on and the most options. Your priorities when leveling lords will vary based on what type of lord you are looking at. I believe that almost every single lord in the game can be separated into one of two groups based on their battle abilities, and we can use this to dictate what's worth investing in their skill trees. Firstly, we have fighters. These are your mostly melee focused lords with no real spells or other ways to deal damage. The power of these fighters can vary wildly from your standard generals of the Empire all the way up to the Grim Reaper himself, Malus Darkblade, but generally, unless you're wanting to create a one-man army, you'll want to follow this order. First off, the blue line, that almost always starts with Route Marcher. Here you will get the initial boost to movement range in the campaign, which is never not useful, along with a massive variety of buffs depending on the faction. Generally, in the first block, you are looking at reducing recruitment costs, maintaining control of settlements, or extra income from sacking and raiding. Again, there can be more than just these, but in general, this is a good place to start investing in whatever will be most useful to that specific lord in that specific campaign. In general though, recruitment cost reduction will be pretty useful, but just use context clues to guide you. Like if you're fighting against a lot of corrupting chaos, maybe removing some of that or spreading your own will be the way to go. The second block of the blue line is usually where you find more powerful effects like improved replenishment, reduced upkeep, and lightning strike. Lightning strike in particular allows you to attack armies one at a time rather than having them all reinforcing each other, which can allow you to win situations that would otherwise be truly impossible. Replenishment is almost always the way to go whenever you see it, as keeping your army at full health means keeping it at full power, and this makes that easier and faster. I'm not even going to mention that the exact options will vary, but you'll usually have something like this. And lastly, each faction will have their own twist on a final skill for the blue line, but in general, it offers a nice stack of bonuses that are well worth the single skill point investment. After the blue tree, it's going to depend on if you are talking about a legendary lord or not. Legendary lords usually have a unique skill line, and you normally gain access to this upon reaching around level 10. These are almost always worth picking up as they're unique buffs that no other lord can get that will stack with everything else. Some lords have pretty bad unique lines, but generally they're going to be worth getting every single time. Just do some reading and you'll realize if they're going to be useful or not. After this, the red line, also known as unit buffs, is the place to be. These skills allow you to buff literally every single unit in your faction and army, but you'll want to be specific to avoid sinking too many points in one place. Focus on units that are already powerful and that you'll be relying on the most going into the endgame. For the Empire, their ranged troops are almost always the strongest units they have, so are a great choice. You can also choose to lean into your faction or lord's gimmick here to really commit to the bit. For example, Ungrim Iron Fist loves his Slayers, so why not make them even better to squeeze all the power you can out of them. The second half of the tree brings more buffs to larger groups of units once they reach a high level of XP. These are worth getting, but just make sure you are actually keeping units alive long enough to reach max rank, otherwise these skills are actually worthless. And you can tell units rank by these three little chevrons that appear as they get more kills in combat. Lastly, the end of these trees gets your lordsome abilities usually focused on buffing nearby allies, so work great for fighters that are normally in the middle of things. After the red line, you're going to be at the end of your available points, so this will be the time to pick up any last bits that you missed. The top row normally has some decent buffs to various stats, which are normally worth getting depending on your options. The yellow line buffs the combat power of that lord in particular, and is only worth investing in if that lord is already a powerhouse in combat. You're never going to take a mid-battler and make them into a top tier fighter, so just buff their defense if you have the skill points to spare, and move on. And for fighter lords, that really is about it. Thinking about it, the exact same order can be used for any of the ranged focus lords. You still want to focus on those army buffs first and come back to their own damage at the end. Ranged lords are more rare and more niche, but in general you can spec into their damage a little bit more instead of survivability, since they should be playing at a safe distance anyway. Next, we have basic spellcaster lords. These are lords that have access to spells but no real combat ability outside of this. For them, we're going to follow more or less the same order as fighters, with one key difference. The first thing you want to do on casters is to unlock their spells, as without them, they are pretty much cosmetic. At the very least, you want to unlock their entire spellbook along with any buffs at the end. If you really want to, you could also upgrade these spells, but I would focus this more on the ones that you find yourself using the most, as otherwise it's a lot of points to have in one place. After spells, it's pretty much the same story of blue, anything unique, red, then tidying up everything else. Now for the exceptions to the rules. There are certain lords that can fight and use spells and maybe abilities that empower their allies. For example, Manfred from the Vampire Counts. If you have a hybrid lord, then honestly, it goes the exact same as the spellcasters, only you buff their damage at the end. Just prioritize their spells or abilities and then carry on as normal. Giant monstrous lords like most of the demons can also be treated much the same. Focus on unlocking any spells or abilities and then buff them in melee to make the most of their power. Moving now to heroes, and things are much simpler but follow these same basic groupings as lords with one new twist. I'll cover that twist first since it is the largest departure from the lords, and that's campaign use. Lords can only be used to lead armies, so you build them for the same job every time. However, heroes can also be used on the campaign map to assassinate enemy heroes, weaken settlements, and much more. In general, I mostly use heroes with the Assassinate skill on the campaign map, since they can take out powerful heroes as well as acting as scouts to lift the fog of war or scout for ambushes. However, all hero actions can be useful depending on who you are playing as and what you are trying to achieve. Stealing research, damaging buildings, blocking armies, and more can all be useful depending on your exact situation, so just take a look at what each of your hero types can do and figure out if you want to make them better at that. If you want to use a hero in the campaign, then you are going to focus most of their levels on the bottom row, where you can find skills to improve their various actions. This ranges from improving the odds of success to empowering the effects, so is well worth doing as soon as you can to make them much better and more effective in their role. Occasionally, there will be other skills useful to a hero outside of an army, but this varies from hero to hero, so have a search around for anything non-battle or army related. As for heroes in armies, well, let's start with fighters. Since there's no bottom row to improve your army outside of maybe a passive buff to XP or replenishment, which is always a great pick, you're going to want to focus entirely on stat buffs. Just like the lords, if the hero lacks a lot of damage, you are likely not going to change that with just a few skills, so simply make them better at what they can already do. That means tanky heroes build defensive and high damage ones build damage. Most heroes also have other lines they can access upon reaching certain levels, and these are always a good pickup, bringing various buffs for themselves and the army. And lastly, the top row has similar skills to the lords, so random stat buffs or resistances, which can be grades depending on the exact hero and skill. And this goes for any ranged heroes, just the same. Buff their damage since they shouldn't need defense if you keep them safe, get any buffs to the army and any abilities, and you're all good. With caster heroes, it's pretty much a similar story to the lords, where you just focus on the spells right from the start to make them actually useful. Since heroes normally have less options for skills, feel free to upgrade all the spells you want, since in most cases, there really isn't anywhere else to spend these skill points. You'll usually have a tree unlock once they have a few levels under their belt, along with the top row for some more bonuses. And of course, passive upgrades to buff the army or local province along the bottom can be great depending on your options and goals. I know heroes are being glossed over, but for the most part they are extremely simple. They focus on either fighting really well, casting spells, or buffing the army, so just make them better at their job, and you can't go wrong. I will say there is nothing stopping you from having heroes be strong in battle and on the campaign map. With a lot less skills to choose from, you can easily do this without leaving anything feeling half-baked. It just might take you a few more levels to reach final form in either, but as long as you keep them alive, it's not really a problem. Now for the second part of Lords and Heroes customization, and that is items. These are found in the Details tab on the right side of the screen, and every Lord and Hero can equip two kinds. You have magic items which come in equipment slots for armor, weapons, talismans, enchanted items, and arcane items for any casters, and most of these focus on empowering the character themselves. Then ancillaries are usually buffs for the army. First things first though, how do you get these items? Well, like most things in game, you primarily get them through battling. Each time you fight, you have a small chance to find an item as part of your post-battle loot, and this chance can be improved by various skills, along with certain faction-specific options like faction effects, research, and so on. Once you have some items, you'll want to make sure your Lord and Heroes are getting geared up, so you leave no value on the table. With magic items, since most of them focus on stat buffs or abilities, you want to equip the items that best complement that character's playstyle in battle. So use weapons that grant melee buffs on your melee battlers, debuff aura talismans on your frontline bulwarks, and stealth on your flankers. It really is that simple, and feel free to move items between lords regularly to ensure all the power is where you need it. There's no real right or wrong answer here, so just pick the items that work the best with that specific character for your specific playstyle. You can also gain lord-specific magical items through quests, and you can view these from the quest tab. These can usually be equipped by that specific lord, so are usually worth the hassle of the quest, especially since they're also normally some of the most powerful items you can get your hands on. Not all of them, mind you, so never be sorry for equipping something else if you get a real stinker, but still worth knowing that they are there if you need them. For ancillaries, you're more looking at buffs and bonuses that affect the entire army, and things get a little more but also a little less complicated. There's tons of options, from assignable banners to empower certain units, to increasing various army stats like Winds of Magic Reserve, to even empowering local settlements with bonus income, control, and corruption. Generally, you want to keep your powerful unit buffs on your strongest army doing all your expansion and foreign battling, then keep the income buffs for armies more likely to be on the defense, otherwise they'll be buffing basically nothing. Again, I feel like these are pretty obvious items for who should equip them and when, so I won't spend too much time here. One last thing to mention is that you can salvage any of these items and ancillaries to gain a little gold. If you have something that no one is making use of and never will, by all means, sell it for cash. Unique items cannot be sold, so you don't have to worry about that, as if you really want them back, chances are you might find them again later. Magic items can also be fused, which requires you to select 2 items of the same rarity and type and fuse them together for one of a higher rarity. This is a great way to acquire more powerful items and tidy up the menu, so an absolute win. But what I want to know is, which skills or items do you think are underrated? Are you a defender of leadership or size, or perhaps an enjoyer of upgraded turning speed? Let me know in the comments below. Like the video if you did, subscribe for more, and if you want more Warhammer 3 guides, then check out this video for a beginner's guide to Immortal Empires.